Okay, everybody, in our last group of project feedbacks, we're going to start out with Christian's work. Christian did his service learning at the YALT program, and again, a really nice artist statement. Just helps us understand the imagery a little bit more, his personal connection to it. I love the fact that you did choose something that is alignment with your career path. So I think that that's obviously something we wouldn't have known had we not have had that artist statement. So this is really why those are such a really great tool for us. Also, again, which a lot of you guys did, I really appreciate the fact that you took the time to name the photos. And again, I think this helps connect us a little bit more to them. They're not just a face, but they're also a name like Nate and Justin and Chris that go along with it. So really good. So let's take a look at the images. So in our first shot here, you made a conversion to black and white, and you did that on your whole project, which is really great. I love when someone does consistently black and white throughout a project. A few of you guys have, kind of thrown in one black and white photograph here and there, which is okay, but I think when we do it consistently through the whole project, it really, I think, resonates that much more. So I appreciate that you did that here, Christian. So black and whites are always a really big challenge to kind of represent all of the tones in a really compelling way. So I like the fact that you have some really rich black darks in there, but it's always good to kind of look at our histogram, which this is our histogram up here, and we can always go into our window and call our histogram up. But this histogram is kind of like a map of where our tonal range falls in a photograph. And so if we look at this, we can see, over here are where your whites, over here are where your middle tone grays are, and over here are where the blacks exist. And we can see that there's a lot of middle grays and a lot of blacks, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of whites. And one of the things we can do to kind of help this, and I think this is really critical with black and white imagery, is that we express that full tonal range. And you can see when I just pull this left slider over in the curves adjustment, or I'm sorry, the levels adjustment, you can see how that image, I like to use the word pops a little bit more. So here it's kind of hung up in sort of our middle grays, where here we've got just a little bit more white to it and a little bit more pop or three-dimensional quality, and there's a little bit more of a separation between all of those middle tone grays. That being said, really beautiful photograph, done very technically well. Everything's in focus. I love how you're using the shallow depth of field effect here in the background. The one thing I noticed in almost all of your images, there seems to be like this little halo around all of the main areas. And I'm not sure if you made a selection there, and in the selection, there's just a little bit of feathering going on that's kind of being recorded as like again, I'm calling it like a little halo or like a little edge glow on there. Not sure whether that's intentional or not, but it certainly is in all of your images. We can even see that here. I don't know if, again, that was part of you working some of the adjustments on there, and if it's intentional, certainly okay on that. But if you're trying to blend this in, you kind of got to watch out on that. And again, see here, it's the same way on this image where we've lost most of our high tones, and we can kind of play around with that and just bring a little bit more into the photograph. But gosh, what a beautiful portrait. Really, really love the portrait. It doesn't feel like the camera is present here. It's just feels like sort of an unobtrusive, quiet moment that really works for me. So anyhow, great job with this. I mean, your portraits are really, really beautiful. I think every single one of these. Oops, let's go back here. Just look at that great expression. In portraiture, we really want to kind of look the subject in the eye. There's an old saying that the eyes are the windows to the soul. And I think in many instances here, you photograph your subjects in a way that we connect really well to their eyes. Again, I just think that your whites are looking, really muddy in these images. So again, we just maybe want to play with our levels adjustment here just a teeny bit to get that to punch in. Again, same way here, and see what I mean. Again, I'm just kind of seeing that halo on there. That looks like maybe some sort of adjustment selection going on. But other than that, gosh, your images really are beautiful. Just another way too, we can kind of go in and mess around with some blending modes on our level, and again, that might help us just get that black, really black and white, and all the wide spectrum of middle tones in there, really done well. So great work. I mean, I really love your portraits. I love the fact that they're really up close, they're personal. We make that eye connection with the subject. I think all of that's really fantastic. Even this image where he's kind of candidly laughing, I think is wonderful. Okay, so great job, and then keep up the good work, and we'll look forward to seeing what you have for us in the final. And remember, if you do go black and white in the final, try to really establish that nice wide tonal range of things, rather than kind of having all your blacks hung up in the middle grays zone. But beautiful images, really, really nice job here. And next up we have Chloe's work, and Chloe's artist statement is really interesting. I love how you add sort of this historical element in it in the first paragraph, talking about the relationship between humans and cats, and the age that it goes back. So really neat job on that. Another really good artist statement that I want to encourage everybody to look at, because it's not just descriptive. It gets us a little bit more interested in the story of humans and cats, and also helps us understand a little bit more about this 10 Lives Club that we're going to see images for. So definitely pause this video here and just give it a quick read. And then jumping into her images of the cats. Again, beautiful image, and I love the fact that we've got sort of this nice blue background that it's sitting on. I love the juxtaposition of the rusty colored cat versus the pure black and white cat. I love how they're sort of like sitting end to end here, and both of them sort of are quietly unaware of your presence in the image there. And I also love this, I don't know, it was like a toy giraffe or whatever that is up there, that also kind of helps create that sort of interplay between everything that's going on in the image there. You had seen I zoomed in a little bit there. Again, everybody's pretty much getting this noise in their images, and that noise again is related to using high ISO. And we can, oh, actually your ISO is only 100. Interesting. So here, one thing, Chloe, that I would suggest that you do in a situation like this, your ISO is at 100 and your exposure is at 1/25 of a second. We can easily move this ISO up to 400, which by moving it up to 400, we're basically doubling it twice. So 100 to 200 is doubling it once, and 200 to 400 is doubling it twice. So when we do that, we can also double this exposure number. So we can, doubling it once is going to be 1/50th of a second, and then doubling it twice is going to be 1/100th of a second. When you do that, you're going to eliminate a little bit of the softness in this image that's kind of related to the camera shutter setting being just a teeny bit on the slow side. And you've already got a little bit of grain in here, or a little bit of noise, which I suspect has to do with the fact that maybe the image was a little bit underexposed. So maybe that's one little tip we can give you here moving forward, to just pay attention. And you know, it's great if you can shoot at ISO 100, but that ISO 100 is not going to help you if your shutter setting is so slow that you're not getting, you know, the sharp in focus images that we need. Beautiful image. I love how the light is kind of coming from this direction and just falling on the cat's face. There's a really wonderful three-dimensional quality to that light. If you remember all the way back when we were talking about perceptual skills, and how using side lighting is going to create texture in things. So that's really wonderful in this image. And again, another beautiful image. Especially, I love the way you're using lighting in these two shots to kind of create little pockets of illumination in there. And these pockets of illumination are definitely coming from the side of the frame. And by coming from the side of the frame, again, they really emphasize sort of the textural quality of the cat's fur here. And also sort of work to draw our eye right to the cat's eye, which, you know, I've been saying, you know, in so many of these feedback videos, that the eyes are so critical in our images, whether they're portraits of humans or of cats. I mean, it's critical that our eye goes to their eye, and you've done a really nice job with that in these images. Sorry, I'm going out of order on you. You know what's really interesting about this image is you're shooting it from ground up, and so we're kind of looking up at the cat, and that really provides us with I think a totally different vantage point than we're used to. And I've got to say, you know, nothing against cats here, but just seen so many portfolios with cat images in it. I'm kind of thirsting for something that's a little bit different. And for me, I think this is a great example of something that's a little bit different. That angle of view that you're shooting from sort of almost makes that cat seem larger than life. And maybe even the camera has sort of this illusionary quality of maybe being a mouse. And, you know, the cat is sort of like looking down on it, getting ready to pounce. So really wonderful shot. Love this image. Uh, and another beautiful shot. I love how you're using um, this box that's got the hole cut in it as sort of a virtual frame for the cats, and especially love how the gray cat is just kind of peering in there. And it's neat to see that, you know, you really have to work around this frame here. But as you start sort of looking at it, you see the black cat in the background there, and it kind of sneaks up on you. So there's sort of a little bit of a humorous quality to this. And, you know, remember, whenever we have any kind of pattern or repeating thing, which in this case is I don't know what you call this, but whatever this pattern is, when we have this repeating pattern, when we break it up with something, I think our eye very much is drawn to things. And then again, just another interesting vantage point image, where you're almost kind of eye level with the cat, and sort of the viewer is relating to the cat almost at its own level there. So you're almost seeing it from cat's eye world. Great shot, and we've probably seen a bunch of shots like this. Although the one thing that really grabs my attention here is the reflection of the eye in the window. I'm just wondering if you maybe would have taken a step back, half a step back, whether you could have gotten the reflection of the other eye in the window. I think that would have been even that much more breathtaking if you would. And then again, this last image, which again, very sharp focus. You're using that small depth of field to make the background go out of focus. The cat here almost feels like it has a human quality, kind of like sitting back in the chair, almost like it's watching TV, or ready to click the clicker to change the stations. So anyhow, really nice job with this project, Chloe. The only one thing that I would suggest is just keep an eye on that ISO. Our ISO and our shutter and our aperture, all three of them kind of go together. And yeah, it's great if you can use that low ISO, but if you're using such a low ISO that you also have to use a really slow shutter, then you're going to be sacrificing a little bit of the sharpness and the quality in there, because you're just not going to be able to hold a camera perfectly steady for that 1/25th of a second duration that the lens is going to be open. I know 1/25th of a second doesn't seem like a long time, but in camera terms and in photography terms, it certainly is an eternity. So just keep an eye on that. But other than that, really beautiful images, and a few shots that I think were really different than some of the other images from the 10 Lives Club that we saw. So I was happy to see them, and looking forward to your stuff at the end of the semester. Good luck. And next up, we have Jill's work. And Jill has another really wonderful artist statement. And I think, you hear me talking about wanting artist statements to be a little bit more on the poetic side, or using like really thoughtful word choice. And I think Jill provides us with a really perfect example of that. Uh, Certainly this paragraph right here, connecting the myth of the cave that we had you read with some of the things that she experienced. I think that is really high level work here for artist statements. So I really appreciate the time and effort you put into this, Jill. It's really nice. And taking a look at your images. So, again, like said with a few other people, when we go in and we look at the histogram of your image, that histogram is really telling me that the image itself, the exposure is pretty dark. So this big mountain range here on the histogram, we want that mountain range to be kind of like in the middle of the frame. So if we were to, pull this middle gray to the middle of that hill there, so to speak, you can see how that brightens that image up considerably. So definitely keep an eye on that, Jill. That's something that it's an additional way that you can really ensure that your images are exposed correctly. And then there's the Yalt sign here. Again, super colorful, and is a great maybe title or finishing type of image for your project. So I like that a lot, and I like the fact that you give us a little bit on the outside here, some of the texture of I guess that's a bulletin board in the background, or whatever that is. And it looks like, I apologize, it went out of order again, but you use that as your closing slide or your closing image. So I think that's really nice, perfect for that. let's sneak over here and get back to the order. Number 2, another sign, and I love the fact that it's got a little bit of a curl to it, and that curl kind of emphasizes the three-dimensionality of this image. It doesn't feel like it's a flat piece of paper embedded into our screen. It almost feels like it's curling up off of the screen, and I think the little shadows behind it really help this. And I'm going to talk about something in a second, but I want you to look at this image and just see how it just has that really wicked three-dimensional quality to it. It doesn't feel like it's kind of like flat. It really feels like we can perceptually see that curl to the paper. So we go to image number 3. What's going on here, Jill, is it looks like you're using a flash in this image. And the image is also out of focus. So let's go in your settings here, and yeah, it does look like your flash fired on us. And you're also, you're at an f13, which is a really high f-stop number, and you still miss the focus. When we're at a high f-stop number like that, you should have a really deep depth of field, and almost everything's out of focus. So I suspect maybe what was going on here is you were in a really dark situation, and in dark situations like that, it is really critical that we are double checking our focus and making sure that the focus is dead on. And quite honestly, I feel like the flash also is not helping this image, because it's putting this sort of really unflattering dark shadow behind this guy's head. And I think all in all, the image just like it feels very flat and non three-dimensional, because that light's coming from the same direction as the camera rather than coming from one of the two sides here. So for your final project, make sure you avoid using a flash, because I think that really is going to flatten out things. And also, if you're using a flash, you're probably in a situation that's going to be really dark. And if you're in a situation that's really dark, it's going to be a little bit more challenging to focus. And we really want to make sure our images are focused really well. Another nice image here, beautiful smiles on the faces of these two people. Feels like just a wonderful sort of spur of the moment, candid shot. So I really love that. I just want to go in again and notice that you're working with this flash in here again. And one of the things that happens with the flash too is a flash, as it travels farther away from the camera, it begins to diminish very rapidly. So in other words, the light falls off really rapidly. So what you end up with is stuff in the foreground is going to be really bright, and then stuff in the background that the flash didn't reach because it basically disseminated or spread out. So that stuff goes really dark in the background. And you can see how in the background here, everything's really dark, especially that woman in the back right. And I just think, again, it's not the most ideal way to light something like this. In this instance, I'd probably go with a high ISO and a low f-stop number, and whatever we could get for shutter, whether that's a 30th of a second or a 60th of a second. Let's go back to this image. Again, a great candid shot, but you can see again your foreground is really brightly illuminated, and the background here is kind of super dark. So our lighting looks really uneven in this image. So again, just got to be really careful with that flash. So you can see here your flash didn't fire, which is good. And notice how he kind of blends into the background a little bit. And even if we were to say, okay, well, maybe he's a little bit on the dark side, well, that's okay, because we can go in and we can, just make a really simple correction like that. And if we needed to, we can even, darken up this background a little bit by pulling off some of that mask. Something like that. And that really sort of blends in and gives us a little bit more even lighting than what we were experiencing with, with those other images with the flash. Again, I will just, zoom in on him, and he's out of focus again, though. So I don't know whether you're using the autofocus on the camera or you're actually manually focusing, but in either case, you just gotta really be sharp on that. The writing on his lanyard here is totally out of focus, and that should definitely be in focus. I mean, compared to this image, look how sharp this is. I mean, we can zoom in and read all the little words in there. Beautiful image, and I think that sharpness of the image really reinforces sort of the all the little artistic imperfections in this piece of artwork. I mean, part of the beauty of this artwork is sort of the crayon strokes are really unique and interesting, and we can see the pattern of them. Let's go back to this one. And just again, Jill, the flash in here is killing you. You got to turn that flash off. It's just not a really flattering way to take images. I mean, look at this. This shadow underneath his nose is totally from that on-camera flash. One of the reasons we see photographers shooting with like those umbrellas and the flash is actually off of the camera, that the reason for that is just this. We don't get these kind of weird shadows directly behind things. And then last but not least, again, you kind of see how that shadows is kind of weird. And then, again, in this image here, we kind of want to, I think, tighten that up, and because this guy on this side here really doesn't add anything to the frame. What really makes this image so wonderful and so unique is just these four and the great facial expressions that they all have. So anyhow, Jill, just to wrap things up here, beautiful artist statement. I think, the images that you have, really great facial expressions, super, well-conceived images. You just really got to, though, stop using that flash, because you can see it's just not a very flattering way to approach things. And, just go back and compare, some of your images. I think Christian was also doing stuff from Yalt. And just take a look at how that lighting looks with the flash versus just using the ambient or natural lighting in the room. I think that that's just going to be a critical thing for you to take a look at and make sure that you understand that. And then also focus. We got to be in sharp focus. 2-3 images here that were not in sharp focus, and for your final project, absolutely those images all have to be in sharp focus. At the end of the day, your portfolio is only as good as the weakest images, and in this instance, we've got a couple images here that definitely have some room for improvement on them. So if you have any questions, give a shout, or shoot me an email or text, and we can chat about it some more. So looking forward to seeing your stuff at the end of next week. Thanks. Okay, and then last but not least, we have Catherine's work, and Catherine has an artist statement that, a little bit on the descriptive side, just kind of tells us what the place is that she did her service learning at, and gives us a little bit of background so that we know a bit more about this place, which, again, we've seen all kinds of different approaches to these artist statements. So when you're writing your artist statement for the final project, take the best parts of each one and try to, bring them into your own style of writing, and just make it thoughtful and poetic, and kind of tease the viewer to want to look at the images and proceed further into the project. So speaking of which, let's look at the stuff. So I love this shot. Obviously the first thing that my eye is drawn to is this sort of rusted texture on the wheel there of this cart. Clearly it's something that's been used over and over again. Um, Taken from a very low vantage point, that again is, I think, kind of different. We go around in our daily lives seeing everything from kind of eye level, so when we come down a little bit like this, I think it offers the viewer a little bit more interesting perspective. Beautiful image, very balanced. In our discussion of composition, we talk about balance. And this one, we certainly have a symmetrical balance where everything on the left-hand side of the frame mirrors everything on the right-hand side of the frame. So from an aesthetic perspective, fantastically composed image. And of course, the colors in here up against sort of the neutral brown of the box is really wonderful. And then the next one, again, really, really beautiful composition that you're working with here. Sort of the repeating patterns, and then the diagonal line. I love the little bit of orangish brown color too that's sort of peeking through the holes in the carton, that sort of breaks up that pattern that you've set up in your images. Oops, sorry, it looks like it went out of order there again. A great portrait of presumably either one of the people working there helping out, or one of the patrons. Image does look a little bit soft, not entirely in focus. I think part of that is, again, maybe a little bit of a high ISO 1600 for sure, but I feel like your focus is just a little bit soft on this image. So gotta watch out for that. And certainly I think in instances like this, I tend to want to crop in a little bit tighter and focus in on him. Maybe have a little bit of the background, but sort of, I don't know, these people at the back and the side of the frame here kind of don't feel like that they're critical to the whole image. Love this shot, love the expression on his face. Again, you do a really wonderful job of composing your frames, using shape and pattern and line to really draw the viewer's attention to the main part of the photograph. So, our eye goes here, but this sort of really kind of frames it nicely, and again, gives our eye a place to land in the frame. And I love that you kind of really tightened up in this image. I might even be apt to go a little bit tighter there, and just focus in, especially on the texture in her hands and the various bright contrasting colors of the squash in this image. Whoops. Let's bring that back. But really, really nice shot nonetheless. And a few of you guys have done this in this project. What we got going on here is we have two people that are sort of looking down, and the viewer wants to see what they're looking at, but it's kind of like down here, off frame. So in instances like that, when you have somebody creating this, we like to call this a psychological line, or a psychic line. We want it to go somewhere and not have it go off the frame, because what's happening here is our eye isn't landing within the frame of the photograph. It's actually landing outside of the frame of the photograph, kind of down here. And then this image, I almost am apt to sort of put this image in the beginning as frame number one, because here it's sort of like, outside of this place, there's sort of maybe a scarcity, a sort of, non-colorful world, so to speak. And then once we go inside, it kind of opens up and explodes with color. And perhaps that was even your intention there. I just noticed that kind of got it labeled as image 5. So maybe this image might be more appropriate as image 1 in there. But nevertheless, really, really good job with this. And I love this arrow that, for me also sort of, kind of pushes us into the project. We want to like actually come in. You're in sort of a subtle way here, inviting the viewer in to the photograph. So nice work with this. Just a couple little focus issues in there, but all in all, really, really good job with the project and some really compelling imagery. So to everyone, good job on all of this. Make sure you watch everybody's videos, not just your own, because there's a lot here to take away, and definitely some tips for succeeding on your final project. So look forward to seeing your work in another couple weeks here. And again, do your best to make sure that all of the images that are in the portfolio are only your best images. Your portfolio, again, is only as strong as the worst images are. So make sure all of your images are of high quality, in focus, sharp, exposure is correct, and certainly using things like perceptual skill and aesthetic skill, creative skill are all going to be important. So with that, I'll say goodbye.